essentially, in order to break an addictive pattern, to become unaddicted, 30 days of zero interaction with that substance, that person, etc.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah. And 30 days is, in my clinical experience, the average amount of time it takes for the brain to reset reward pathways, for dopamine transmission to regenerate itself. There's also a little bit of science that suggests that that's true. Some imaging studies showing that our brains are still in a dopamine deficit state 2 weeks after we've been using our drug. And then a study by Schuckett and Brown, which took a group of depressed men who also were addicted to alcohol, put them in a hospital where they had received no treatment for depression, but they had no access to alcohol in that time. And after 4 weeks, 80% of them no longer met criteria for major depression. So again, this idea that by depriving ourselves of this high dopamine, high reward substance or behavior, we allow our brains to regenerate its own dopamine for the balance to really equilibrate. And then we're in a place where we can sort of enjoy other things.
So that progressive narrowing of what brings one pleasure eventually expands. So I'd like to dissect out that 30 days a little more finely. And I also want to address, how does one stop doing something for 30 days if the thing is a thought? So we'll kind of put that on the shelf for the moment. So days 1 through 10, I would imagine will be very uncomfortable.
Yes.
They're going to suck, basically, to be quite honest, because the way you describe this pleasure pain balance, to my mind, says that if you remove what little pleasure one is getting, or a lot of pleasure from engaging in some behavior, that's gone. The pain system is really ramped up, and nothing is making me feel good. I'll just use myself as an example. I'm not in recovery, but that 10 days is going to be miserable.
Right.
Anxiety, trouble sleeping, physical agitation, and to the point where, maybe impulsive, angry. Should one expect all of that? Should the family members of people expect all of that?
Yeah. So what I say to patients, and it's a really important piece of this intervention, is that you will feel worse before you feel better.
For how long?
Yeah.
This is probably the first question they ask, right?
And I say, usually in my clinical experience, you'll feel worse for 2 weeks. But if you can make it through those first 2 weeks, the sun will start to come out in week 3. And by week 4, most people are feeling a whole lot better than they were before they stopped using their substance. So you have to, it's a hard thing. Like, you have to sign up for it. And I will say, obviously, there are people with addictions that are so severe that as long as they have access to their drug or behavior, they're not able to stop themselves. And that's why we have, higher levels of care or residential treatment. So this is not going to be for everybody, this intervention, but it's amazing how many people with really severe addictions to things like heroin, cocaine, very severe pornography addictions. I posit this, and I do it as an experiment. I said, let's try this experiment. I'm always amazed, number one, how many of them are willing, and number two, how many of them are actually able to do it. They are able to do it. And so that little nudge is sort of just what they need. And the carrot is, there's a better life out there for you, and you'll be able to taste it in a month. You really will be able to begin to see that you can feel better and that there's another way.
So the way you describe it seems like it's hard. But it's doable for most people, not everybody.
Right.
And we'll return to that category of people who can't do that on their own. Well, then days 21 through 30, people are feeling better. The sun is starting to come out, as you mentioned, which translates in the narrative we've created here and supported by biology, that dopamine is starting to be released in response to the taste of a really good cup of coffee, for instance.
Exactly.
Whereas before it was only to insert, addictive behavior.
Right. That's right.
Whichever.
Of course, coffee can be addictive too, but we'll leave that aside.
Yeah.